After a bad car accident, I asked her to come pick me up from the emergency room. She replied, "Sorry, I am at lunch with my best guy friend. I cannot just leave right now." I sent a text back that just said, "Okay." However, what the police officer told her when he walked up to their table at the restaurant changed everything about her dinner with her friend. You learn a lot about people during a crisis. I know this for a fact because I am a paramedic. I see people on the worst day of their lives every single day. I see how they react, and I see how they treat each other when the sirens are wailing and the world is falling apart. I have seen strangers hold hands with people who are dying. I have seen husbands cry over their injured wives. I have seen the absolute best of humanity in the absolute worst of times. Then there was my girlfriend, Jessica, and a car accident that showed me the absolute truth of her character. We had been together for 2 years. We lived in my apartment, which was a place I had worked my tail off to afford. On the surface, things were good. She was fun, beautiful, and the life of every party. I was the quiet, stable one. I thought we were a good match. I provided the calm, and she provided the excitement. The only real point of friction was her male best friend, a guy named Ryan. Ryan was a trust fund kid who worked as a consultant. That seemed to mean he ate lunch at expensive restaurants 4 times a week and offered advice that nobody asked for. Jessica and Ryan were inseparable. Their bond was, as she always described it, special. They had inside jokes I was never a part of, and their text conversations were constant and secretive. I am not a jealous guy by nature. My job has taught me to be calm under pressure, but the closeness between them always felt off. It felt like I was the third wheel in their 2-person story. Still, I trusted her. I chose to believe her when she said they were just friends. That trust was violently and permanently shattered last Tuesday. I was on my way home from a long shift. It was raining hard. A kid in a modified Honda ran a red light and hit me right in the driver's side door. It was a brutal impact. The world turned into a chaotic mess of screeching metal, shattering glass, and the sickening crunch of my car folding in around me. The next thing I remember is my colleagues, my fellow paramedics, pulling me out of the wreckage. I was strapped to a backboard, my head was pounding, and my left arm was definitely broken. As they were loading me into the ambulance, a police officer I knew, a good cop named Officer Miller, leaned in. "Hey, buddy," he said, looking serious. "Your car is totaled. We are having it towed. We need an emergency contact to notify about the accident and the vehicle's location. Who do you want us to call?" "My girlfriend, Jessica," I managed to say through the pain. I gave him her telephone number. The ride to the emergency room was a blur. They cut my uniform off me, pumped me full of painkillers, and started running tests. The X-rays confirmed it. I had a clean break in my left humerus and a moderate concussion. There was no internal bleeding, thank God. I was beaten up and bruised from head to toe, but I was going to be okay. After about an hour, a nurse came in. The nurse said, "We have tried calling your emergency contact, Jessica, a few times. There was no answer. Is there someone else we can call?" My heart sank. No answer. I knew exactly where she was. It was Tuesday. Tuesday was her standing long lunch day with Ryan. I pulled out my telephone with my good hand. My screen was shattered, but it still worked. I sent her a text message. "Hey, I have been in a bad car accident. I am in the emergency room at St. Mary's. My arm is broken. Can you come pick me up? The car is totaled." I waited. A few minutes later, the 3 little dots appeared. Then her reply came through. It was a message that would change the entire course of my life. Jessica wrote, "Oh my God, that is awful. I am so sorry to hear that. but I am actually in the middle of a really important lunch with Ryan right now. I cannot just leave. Can you get a taxi or something? Let me know how it goes." I read the text once, and then I read it again. I felt a strange, cold clarity wash over me, cutting through the haze of the painkillers. She was not just dismissing me. She was prioritizing a social lunch with another man over my genuine, verifiable emergency. I was lying in a hospital, and she was worried about interrupting her appetizer. The final pillar of our relationship had just crumbled into dust. I thought about the police officer, Officer Miller. I thought about the fact that they still needed to make official contact with her, and a plan began to form. It was a cold, precise, and beautifully appropriate plan. I took a screenshot of her text message. Then I texted back a single word. "Okay." Then I called Officer Miller. "Hey, Officer Miller," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It is Adam Sterling. Thanks for your help at the scene. Listen, I know you guys were trying to reach my emergency contact, Jessica. She is not answering her telephone, but I know exactly where she is. It is important you make contact with her to complete the report. She is at a restaurant called the Gilded Spoon downtown. I think it is crucial that an officer speaks to her in person to inform her of the situation." Officer Miller, being a good cop and a good friend, understood immediately. "No problem, Adam," he said, and I could hear a new edge in his voice. "We will dispatch a unit right away to make an in-person notification. You just focus on getting better." I hung up the telephone. I leaned back against the hospital pillows. Jessica was having a very important lunch. I had a feeling it was about to be interrupted. Here is an update. The hour I spent waiting in that emergency room bed was one of the most clarifying hours of my life. The physical pain was still there, a dull, throbbing ache in my arm and my head, but the emotional pain had been replaced by a kind of icy resolve. The betrayal was so absolute and so profound that it had short-circuited all my normal feelings of hurt and sadness. All that was left was a quiet, focused anger and a need for decisive action. My friend and colleague, Kyle, who had been on the ambulance that brought me in, came to check on me. He took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. And it was not just the broken arm. "What is up, man?" he asked. "You look like you are about to declare war." I showed him the text message from Jessica. He read it, and his face hardened. "You are kidding me," he said, keeping his voice low. "She chose lunch over this? With that Ryan guy?" "She did," I confirmed. "So, what are you going to do?" he asked. "I already did it," I said. "I had the police dispatched to her restaurant to make an in-person notification." Kyle stared at me for a second, and then he let out a low whistle. "Dude, that is savage. And brilliant." I heard the full story later about what went down at the Gilded Spoon from Officer Miller. He told me exactly what his 2 patrol officers reported back to him. Honestly, it turned out even better than I had pictured it in my head. The Gilded Spoon is one of those restaurants where appearing important is everything. It costs too much, it is trendy, and it is always packed with folks trying to get noticed. Apparently, Jessica and Ryan had a prime table right by the window. They were laughing and sharing a bottle of overpriced pink wine. Then, 2 uniformed police officers walked right into the restaurant. The whole place got quiet instantly. You do not usually see cops show up in a joint like that unless something is wrong. Everyone started staring and whispering. The officers walked slowly and with purpose through the dining area, looking over the tables. They stopped right at the table where Jessica and Ryan were sitting. One of the officers, a big, serious-looking guy, looked right at Jessica. He asked in a calm voice that was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear clearly, "Ma'am, are you Jessica Carter?" Jessica looked up, her face showing confusion and annoyance at being interrupted. She said, "Yes. Is there a problem, officer? The officer spoke in a flat, official tone. He stated, "We are here regarding a major vehicle collision involving your partner, Mr. Mark Davis. He was transported by ambulance to St. Mary's Hospital from the scene of the accident with significant injuries." All the color just left Jessica's face. Ryan was staring blankly, holding his wine glass halfway to his mouth. The officer kept talking without hesitation. He said, "His vehicle was totaled in the collision. We have been trying to contact you for the last 2 hours because you are listed as his primary emergency contact. Mr. Davis informed us that we could find you here. He asked us to make an official in-person notification of the incident. We also need to inform you that you will need to coordinate with the towing company regarding removing any personal belongings from the vehicle." Every single word he said hit hard. Major collision. Transported by ambulance. Significant injuries. Totaled car. Emergency contact. The officer was not accusing her of doing anything wrong. He was just stating the cold, hard official facts. However, by doing that, he was painting a clear picture for everyone in that restaurant to see. A man was lying in the hospital after a serious accident, and his girlfriend, his emergency contact, was enjoying a leisurely lunch with another man and could not be reached. According to the story, Ryan looked at Jessica totally differently after that. The charming lunch companion vibe was gone. Now he was looking at a stranger who had just revealed how shockingly selfish she really was. The officer finished his speech. He said, "That is all, ma'am. You should probably head to the hospital." The 2 officers then turned around and walked out of the restaurant just as calmly as they had entered. They left behind dead silence, a table full of half-eaten food, and the ruined reputation of a woman who had just been publicly exposed for being heartless. Her very important lunch was officially over. Here is update number 2. The immediate aftermath was a predictable storm of chaos, which I watched from the calm safety of my hospital room. After being discharged from the emergency room with my arm in a sling and a handful of prescriptions, my sister came to pick me up. She had actually been my real emergency contact all along, and I had called her as soon as I was done with the police. The anger in her voice when I told her the story about Jessica was enough to power a small city. She took me back to her house to recover. I had no intentions of going back to my apartment until Jessica's presence had been completely removed. Of course, Jessica started blowing up my telephone. It was a string of frantic text messages and missed calls. She wrote, "Mark, I am on my way to the hospital. I am so sorry." My telephone was on silent mode. That was a classic, pathetic lie. Then the messages changed tone. She texted, "Where are you? They said you were discharged. Why are you not answering me? I am freaking out. This is all your fault. You sent the cops to my lunch just to humiliate me." The switch from fake concern to furious accusation happened fast, and it told me everything I needed to know. I did not reply to any of her messages. I just blocked her number on my phone. The real story about what happened that afternoon actually came from Ryan. It turns out that he was not interested in being a supporting character in her drama. He sent me a message on social media that evening. It was surprisingly direct. It read, "Hey, Mark. I do not know you very well, but I was with Jessica at lunch today. I just want you to know that I had no idea about your accident. The second the police officers left, I paid my half of the bill and I got out of there." The way she dismissed something so serious showed me that she is not a person I want to be associated with. I am sorry for whatever part one played in your relationship issues. I am done with her. Hope you have a fast recovery. It was a self-serving message, of course. It was designed to clear his own name of any guilt. But it confirmed my victory. I had not just humiliated her. I had exposed her true character to the very person she was trying to impress. She had lost her boyfriend and her best friend in the exact same afternoon. With my sister Ashley's help, I put the rest of my plan into motion. While I rested, she acted as my general. She called a moving company that specialized in removing contents after a breakup. She met them at my apartment the next day. They packed every single thing Jessica owned. They packed every piece of clothing, every shoe, and every book into boxes. They were instructed to leave the boxes neatly stacked in the living room. Then my sister called a locksmith. The locks were changed. Finally, she sent a formal email to Jessica from a new email address. The subject line was retrieval of personal property. The email read, "Jessica, this email is to inform you that your relationship with Mark Davis has been terminated. As you are not on the lease for his apartment, your residency has also been terminated. All of your personal belongings have been packed. You have a 48-hour window to arrange for their professional removal. You are to contact me, Mark's sister, at this email address to schedule a specific 2-hour time slot. You will be met at the property and allowed entry for the sole purpose of removing your belongings. You will not be permitted to remain in the apartment afterward. If your property is not removed within the 48-hour window, it will be considered abandoned and will be disposed of. Any attempt to contact Mark directly will be considered harassment." It was cold. It was legal, and it was final. She had abandoned me in my moment of need. I was now treating her with the same impersonal, logistical detachment. Here is the final update. It has been 7 months since the accident. My arm has healed completely. The concussion is a distant memory, and my life is blessedly, wonderfully quiet. Jessica, as instructed, coordinated with my sister to retrieve her belongings. The story I got was that she showed up with her father, looking sullen and defeated. She did not say a word the entire time. She just directed the movers her father had hired, cleared out her boxes, and left the key on the counter. The social fallout for her was, from what I hear, absolute. The story of the police showing up at the Gilded Spoon became a legendary piece of gossip in her social circle. It was a story with no good spin. No one could defend her actions. She was the woman who chose brunch over her boyfriend in the emergency room. Her attempts to paint me as a manipulative villain failed spectacularly because the core facts were so damning. She lost most of her friends, not because they were loyal to me, but because they were embarrassed to be associated with her. She tried to reach out to me about a month ago. It was a long, rambling email full of excuses and non-apologies. She said she had panicked. She said she was not thinking clearly. She said Ryan had put a lot of pressure on her. It was a master class in shifting the blame. She ended the email by saying she missed me. She said she missed the stable life we had built together and that she had learned her lesson. I did not send a reply. Instead, I just set up a new filter in my email account. Now, anything that comes from her address goes straight into the trash can. What she learned was not my problem to worry about. My revenge was not really about the police officers or the scene at the restaurant. That was just how I delivered the message. The actual revenge was found in the quiet and firm way I cut her out of my life. She had treated me like I was just an inconvenience. I was just a background character in her exciting life. So, I simply wrote her out of my script entirely. I took back the life I had built. I took back the stability she had taken for granted, and I made it mine again, completely and totally. The part that feels the most satisfying is the quiet knowledge that I saw the truth and I acted on it without hesitating. A relationship is supposed to be a partnership. The number one rule of a partnership is that you show up when it matters. She did not just fail that test. She set the test paper on fire and walked away laughing. The look on her face when the police officer walked up to her table was just the very first consequence she had to face. The empty apartment, the silent telephone, and the life she lost were the real lessons. She acted like she could not risk getting sick before her fun trip. In the end, though, I was the one who was cured. I got rid of the sickness in my life, and that sickness was her.